Backstage Capital.
We're at San Diego at the University of San Diego. When I say we, I mean me, Diane, and Chacho rolling up here like we own the place. Welcome to the East Wing of my estate. Don't let a lot of people in here.
Yeah. She's letting Chacho stay for the evening.
Yeah.
I feel very grateful.
I'm Arlan. I'm based in Los Angeles. I run Backstage Capital. I'm not an angel, but both the size of the fund and the way that we invest is very similar to an angel fund. The reason I'm not an angel is because I invest other people's money in a pooled investment. So we invest in startup companies that are led by women, people of color, and LGBT founders across many industries and sectors and across the country. We have seen about 2,000 companies in these last two and a half years and invested in more than 50 of them. And have kind of started from scratch. I did start from scratch and raised, a pooled investment fund, and we've deployed nearly 3 million of that to date. Oh, and the hobbies, passions. I'm also a tour manager for musicians, and I am a general hospital enthusiast. My strategy in venture capital is to come to it from a very different point of view, and not as analytical when it comes to statistics, which sounds crazy. I know LPs will be scared to hear that, but we have that in place at the fund. But I personally am looking for the teams and looking at the founders the most. And I've said this a lot of times, but I'll say it again, pattern matching for grit. I think there's so much innovation that's being overlooked because someone is looking for more traditional, I guess, historically what has worked. I'm who you come to if you've been turned away for other reasons. I can kind of look at it from a different angle. And then once we get past that, like I said, 2,000 companies, 50 investments, so it's not that many. The reason that it gets boiled down to 50 is because all of the other stuff is in place at the fund with other people looking at more analysis of that. Tell me when I can open my eyes.
Ooh, just keep doing all.
God.
We're in San Diego.
San Diego, a whale's vagina. Yesterday we were at UC Berkeley. Today we're at University of San Diego. That's 2 universities in 2 days in California, well known. I've been on this campus and the other campus more than I've set foot in any college campus in my life. It's been a really busy few days. It's been a blur, but this is exactly what I think it takes to capitalize on the momentum of the funds and getting the word out there so that more founders and aspiring founders can learn about us. So if you're watching this, I would encourage you to share it with someone that you feel will benefit from it. And we'll keep producing the content as long as you guys keep watching and listening and giving us your feedback, which you've been pretty amazing at so far. And yeah, all of these events that I'm doing now that I can talk in public without fainting, crying, or other sort of weirdness, they're for that purpose too. So I'm a venture capitalist. Who knew? Who knew that was going to happen? And also a tour manager for a musician named Janine, Janine. Look her up on Twitter, on Instagram. That's her handle is @Janine. And she's on Atlantic Records, and I've been working with her for more than 2 years. She's my homegirl, and she's also one of my clients and like my main touring client. I can only work with one, I should say, and I wanted to be her because she's so amazing. So she just had a couple of shows at Hotel Cafe in Los Angeles, and it's just kind of crazy. Like yesterday I went from speaking on a panel about diversity to running to the airport, That was in San Francisco. Ran to the airport, went to Los Angeles, got there, and I'm not exaggerating, got there 5 minutes before she went on stage, and worked that show. And I just love it. I love how the two worlds collide. They make so much sense to me, and I feel very much at home in both of those worlds. So I'm looking forward to creative ways of keeping them in parallel with each other, and only making the other more valuable in doing so. So if you hear me talk about Janine or working in music, don't get confused. I'm a venture capitalist, I'm a tour manager. Anastasia and I are here in Inglewood at Sip and Sonder. I think we're the first event in this space. They are opening soon, so we get a sneak preview.
You see an article, oh, she went from homeless to multi-million-dollar fund. But she knocked on all these doors, she kicked the doors down, she let them know she was there. In fact, when you look at her Twitter hashtag, Arlan was here. If that's not telling you something, right? That's letting you know who Arlan is. And so, without any further ado, I'd like to bring to you Arlan Hamilton.
Thank you. Thank you.
So when we're talking about, breaking down doors, I think I will go back and say, the VC world is pretty vanilla. So, what made you think that you could break down the door and get a fund?
It was a question of why shouldn't I? I guess ignorance was helpful because I didn't know any better. I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to be there. So that's how I approached it, was there's something missing here. I wish I saw something that I don't see, and since it's not there, then maybe I can be one of the people that starts it. And can I say one thing first? I feel like I'm in an episode of Insecure. You guys are black excellence to the nth degree. Beautiful. I started outside of the ecosystem of Silicon Valley and was an outsider to it. So 5 years ago, I'd say I didn't know what a venture capitalist was. And I think that actually helped. And now today, some of our investors are the most well-known venture capitalists.
You just came from TechCrunch.
Yes.
So you were speaking there, and then you also probably, took in some other conversations. So tell us a little bit about that experience now, 2 years in, perhaps versus what it was, 2 to 3 years ago, right?
Okay.
So what does it look like for you now?
The funny thing is, now when I speak at events like that, like I did a few that were, a few thousand people that come to it and in front of a few hundred. I look at it, first of all, I say, a year ago, I wouldn't have been able to afford to be in this room, let alone be on the stage, or a year or two, whatever. And for TechCrunch, I had never gone to TechCrunch Disrupt. I had only watched it online, and I just knew, the storied history of it. I think that what we're doing is working, and when I say we, I mean Backstage, I mean Code 2040, the K-Pores, Monique at 500, Charles Hudson, Cross Culture. It's working because the people who went to pitch were more diverse than they have been in the past. I personally don't care if that's because they felt they needed to for aesthetics. Don't care the reason. It's happening. So that the runner-up for the $50,000 award was a black woman, and I was part of those decisions, and I saw that it was a fight. Who was going to win out of 22 companies, and she was given a fair shot. And these things aren't, again, we shouldn't be celebrating these things. These are just normal things that should be happening. But when you're talking about tech, I mean, it's women, people of color, have had a hard time there. So I think what we're doing is working. I wrote a blog post in 2015 called Dear White Venture Capitalist. If you're reading this, it's almost too late. And I was always this, the sky is falling, type thing. But I was trying to tell him then. I'm trying to tell him today. I said it at Slack. I was spoke at Slack last week as well. They had their first summit, and Stuart Butterfield, who's CEO of Slack, is an investor in our fund. And I said on that stage the same thing, and that was to a room of about 200, mostly white, mostly male executives and engineers. And my thinking with telling them that is, if you are starting a company, you're going to want to hire for diversity. Maybe you don't believe us that it's more lucrative. Maybe you don't care. But I promise you that in 2 years, when you're raising your Series B, the investors looking at your Series B are going to be pressured by other LPs, by their investors, by their peers to be looking for that. Well, how's your diversity? What are your diversity numbers? So I was trying to give them a peek into the future as well. And it's interesting, the difference between telling someone that with a pitch deck and a Medium post and telling them that with 53 companies invested in. People are listening to us now.
Arlan, if you were to sort of engineer what founders should be doing to put themselves in prime position, not for just today, but for where you see the market going and even that opportunity for additional capital, what would you be saying, in terms of how we look forward and then go back and kind of engineer the perfect organization or founder, or what that looks like, or maybe even tell us through some examples with some of your founders?
So venture capital is not the end-all, be-all answer, first of all. Know that. As Black and brown founders, don't look at venture capital as the savior, because you're really dealing with a few hundred people out of billions in the world. You're dealing with a few hundred people who have the purse string, who hold the purse strings for quite a bit of capital, and they're making that decision. And as much as I'm trying to do to break into that, and as much as others are doing, if you're thinking about the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, it's not necessarily going to happen that quickly. And that's a sobering reality. But the good thing is, if we're aware of that, we can be preparing in other ways. So there's something, I don't know if you're familiar with, there's two things. There's blackandbrownfounders.com, where one of the founders in our portfolio, Ania Williams, has started. It is they go around the country talking to Black and brown founders about how do you just generate revenue. Forget about thinking about raising. How do you generate revenue today? She works closely with a friend of ours, Tara Reid, who runs Apps Without Code, and that teaches you, okay, you're not a technical founder. This is how you get your product out in 2 months, making money. And it's all the same theme, making money, generating your own revenue, so that you are not beholden to venture capital. Because I'm in venture capital. I'm a venture capitalist, and I don't want to be beholden to venture capital. I spend about 50% of my day very, very excited about Backstage and life in general, and about the other 50% is like holding my hand down with my other hand. Don't burn this place to the ground, So don't think of it as I have to raise $1 million from a VC fund, because the majority of companies aren't there anyway. Do what I did. Read everything you can. Watch every video. It's so much free stuff. BackstageCapital.com can be your resource. We have 2 podcasts. We have a video series. We have a lot of written content. In those podcasts, I try to do as much as possible to help people hack their way in to capital. I also personally have this mission to create and invent a new asset class within private equity. So venture capital is I think 3% of all private equity. I just have this vision of there's a sliver there that can be something else.
Sometimes when founders have been bootstrapping their business and they're trying to raise a little capital, there's a debate back and forth on if they should be able to pull out any capital to survive. What is your take on that scenario?
My take on that is please survive. Please eat. Don't get the Lux Uber to the airport. Why, you know? But eat. Have a place to live. Because if you're not doing well and taking care of yourself, nourishing your mind, body, soul, how are you taking care of my investment in your company? How is that going to grow if you're on your last leg every minute I see you? There are some people I see who run themselves ragged thinking that that's what I want to see. Now, I also happen to be a big proponent of self-care, so I lean a little bit further here, and so you may not get the same answer from everybody, but for me, you know, you can get some very specifics, you know, get into specifics. Talk to your investors. Say, okay, we're raising 100,000. I'd like to take 12 of that to cover 6 months. I don't know people's life. I don't know your life. But, you know, I'd like to take some of that so I feel comfortable. And is that okay? Does that make sense before you take the check? Talk to them about it. I think that anyone with your best interest in mind, with the company's best interest in their investment, should and would be okay with that. If they are not, if they have some big problem with that, you should be looking at, do I want this person to have equity in my company when they won't even put equity in me, when they won't even put a stake in me, you know?
Hi, I'm Anthony. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Fitly. We're the creators of SmartPlate. A Latino founder, one of the few in LA and in SF. I was just there for the past year. So my question is, we've done relatively well for being a solo founder, non-technical founder. But I still get a lot of no's. It kills me. I know my fellow Anglo-Saxons and Asians in the Bay Area are getting more yeses than when I approach investors. And I'm a college dropout. Went to community college, got my GED, you know, and never finished. I feel like every time they put a carrot here, I hit that carrot, and then they go, you know, why don't you get down a little bit further? And call me back in 6 months when you get to this other milestone. So I'm holding them accountable, but they keep moving the damn carrot further down the road, and it's frustrating.
So is your question, how racist are the racists?
Precisely. Yes.
Soups. Totes. But there are some very well-meaning people who don't get out of their comfort zone. There's some people that will listen to you, maybe you just haven't met them. And then there are a ton that are just hella racist. And hella, if not racist, raceless. You know, they don't care enough to look beyond what they know. So here's what I say, just based on what I know. When I went out, a lot of people said, who were interested, or I thought were interested, said, okay, I don't think you're gonna be able to raise a fund. But when you have some traction, come back to me. That traction number was about 10 investments. So I came back at 20, and they said, okay, come back when you're at 30. Same people. Came back at 30, came back at 35, let's say. So come back at 50. We're at 50, those people still haven't written checks. The goalpost is moved for probably almost every person on earth. For us, it's more. When you tack on being a woman, it's more than that. Tack on any sort of letter, you know, LGBT, it's more than that. It sucks. I guess the only thing I can tell you is that I'd love to hear more about the company and tell you some ideas of people you could talk to. I can't change the minds and hearts of people who are just hell-bent on being stringent in their thinking. They're not for you anyway. There are some people, though, I think. And yeah, so I think that I think knowing that you're not imagining that, maybe that's helpful. It's true, happens a lot. There's a lot of people that are like you, and I'd love to kind of tap you into a little bit more of the community in Silicon Valley as well, because we would be on your app. We are lit. Backstage Capital is indeed lit.
Hi, my name is Anthony Ortiz, and I'm the founder and CEO of Fitly, and we're the creators of SmartPlay. You can find us at getsmartplay.com, and happy to attend this event here this evening with Arlan, and just doing great things.
Hi, I'm Tulani, the founder of Scoop, and we're a service for the person whose closet is too full. We meet you at your doorstep, resell and donate on your behalf, allowing you to save time, and you also get rewards in return to turn into gift cards. My question is...
Well, she dropped the mic and then she kept going, didn't she?
Oh.
That's a really interesting company. Go ahead.
Thank you. My question is, you mentioned that Backstage is basically similar to an accelerator, but you're not meeting in the location per se. And you also mentioned Code 2040. How do you see yourself helping from your founders from a non-financial standpoint? Are there times when they get together during the year? And obviously, I know you guys are a family.
Yeah.
But I'd love more insight on that.
Yeah, I think we do, if I do say so myself, I think we do a really good job of that. Okay. Because of our check sizes relative to life, we have to do more than just a check. And I would say that most of the founders in our portfolio consider us like a Y Combinator. Like if you got into Backstage, you've gotten into something like that. So we do a lot of things, but I try to focus on bringing other capital in, which is always the hardest part, but it's what we focus on. So we're getting better and better at that just through our network. So we bring in a lot of introductions to investors, and doing that with 50 companies is not easy, but doing it curated and with impact is really important to me personally. And on top of that, we have a lot of other resources. So we help with recruitment. We help with, we're going to be ramping that up even more starting in the fourth quarter. We help with putting people in the same room. So yes, we don't have a year-round or 3-month program, but we will, in certain cities, put people together, because we're all over the country by design, because I didn't want it to be everyone had to be in Silicon Valley, everyone had to be in LA, everyone had to be in these expensive cities for it to work. I wanted a lot of people want to build where they were born or where they were raised, give back by their success, and not be uprooted in some cases, right? So we do a lot of those local events. We do bring people together. We brought 30 companies to South by Southwest. Most of them would not have gone without our stipend, and most of them had not been before. And some of them, we did a survey recently, and several of them still cite that as the pinnacle moment of their company, because they were able to do so many deals in that week and not worry about it. We just had our 2-year anniversary meetup in San Francisco at Airbnb headquarters, where we brought together several of our founders, LPs, and investors and mentors. And the mentor platform is really important too. It's online. It will evolve. It's at 60 right now. So these are people from Pinterest, Airbnb, Facebook, Andreessen Horowitz, that are all linked together with founders, and they help make incredible introductions. So it is like a remote or traveling accelerator, and I only wanted to get stronger.
Hey, I'm Tulani, the founder of Scoop, the better way to let stuff go. You can find us online and use Scoop, as if you need to use Scoop to let your stuff go. And that's just USC-SCOOP, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and of course our website. And based in LA.
Thank you again. And I think most of us, if not all of us in the room, know we don't get these opportunities very often at all. So
I appreciate it, and I'm honored to be with you guys. I just did a fireside chat and Q&A with some excellent founders and some angel investors here in Inglewood in Los Angeles. How do you think it went? Because I wasn't really there.
Right, you're in the moment.
Yes.
I think it went very well. Everyone had great questions.
Go ahead. No, you tell them. You tell them how great I was.
I'm trying to tell them, but the mic's
No, go
here.
ahead. Oh, here's the mic. Go ahead.
Put your head on her shoulder.
Everyone had a really
There's a
great
microphone
question.
here. There's nothing inappropriate happening right now.
But yes, I think it's one of those events, like I was telling someone earlier, like I was literally watching you as if it were the first time hearing you speak, you know. It almost brought me to tears, like almost back to that South by Southwest moment that all of our founders talk about. Just like a momentous occasion and just knowing that you're part of something great. And I think it meant so much to everyone that was here. Just again, having that acknowledgement, like someone's listening to me, someone's here answering my questions, someone's telling me like what venture capital and angel investing and friends and family rounds are about, pre-seed and all of that stuff that you don't get the chance to hear about on a day-to-day.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's awesome I actually come to Inglewood a lot, so it's cool to see something in this particular space, especially for underrepresented, underestimated founders.
Underestimated.
So, yeah.
Oh, so what I wanted to say is someone came up to me today at this event, and I had called on her during the Q&A. I noticed that she had raised her hand over and over again and wasn't getting called on, and I don't know why I said getting, like I'm from some sort of, wasn't raised by wolves. She wasn't getting called on, and I just noticed that she hadn't, and I wanted to make sure that she did. And she came up to me and she said, "That's never happened to me at an event before, where I usually raise my hand over and over again and I don't get seen, and I felt like you saw me." And it was a moment we had. It was deeper than just seeing her. It was deeper than just seeing her.
Oh, cool. Fire truck too.
Always up to no good.
Yeah, Inglewood.
It was deeper than just seeing her in that moment. I think she meant seeing her as a person, seeing her value in life, and it was moving for me to hear her say that. So just wanted to mention that. I see you, and I see you, and I see you, and you and you. Hey, so guess what? Oh,
I don't know how do you do this?
I don't. That's it. The answer is I don't.
So wing it and then you just put your face towards the camera.
Get your life right.